Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season/series finale of Good Girls. A great finale. I'll kind of go into a lot of that more later on, but first and foremost, I just want to break down, the episode. Immediately picking up after Rio and Beth's conversation, their meeting with Secret Service. And I love the lady at that restaurant just tired. Every time it's you guys know the drill. Either I'm going to go and deal with this order and I'm going to come back and there better be someone in that seat. It's just why she's so particular about that, I don't know. Maybe it reflects badly on her job and something maybe she gets reprimanded for oh, there's supposed to be 6 people here, but there's only 5 people there. We could be because I guess it makes sense because you want because what if a 6-party group comes in? That's a whole thing. I get it, but it's still just man, you're so persnippety about that. But Rio doesn't show up because good old cousin Nick shows up to talk to him about Beth and everything. And it's nah, man, I'm just pulling her along. I'm just stringing her along, man. It's not even like that. So sadly, the Secret Service got, Phoebe and Dave kind of bail afterwards. And it's well, what happened? Was that him? And it's no, I won. And it's hey, but not much celebrating because this was supposed to be the plan to get them out. But then Rio's no. We're going to change plans. We're going to change tactics a little bit. He's we're going to handle things my way instead of the Secret Service's way of handling things. That's how we're going to shut this whole operation down. So obviously they finally also figured out, right, we have enough money to disappear. It's not a great life, but it's good enough to make it happen. So it's right, it's time to put Nevada into action. So I thought it was really interesting how the episode was really structured too. It's right, Beth's giving her speech at the same time. Right, can't forget about Dean and Stan. I love that whole thing where Dean and Stan were, they have Vance cornered, and it's oh cool. He's what's this going to be? And they're yeah, we're going to get this done. And he's we're done. Leave my wife out of it. Why should I? It's he's this way all of us kind of win. Your wife doesn't really take the fall. Your wife doesn't really take the fall, and I benefit. And it's yeah, you ain't got to worry about it. We'll beat some Cincinnati. And he's dude, I've been beaten. I've been pushed into lockers and stuff like that. I've even been set on fire. He's go ahead. He takes the bat out nearby and he's here. And they're what's that for? He's you're literally going to have to kill me. That's the only way to stop me from talking. Once again, he acts so hard. I would thought Dean would have called him out more because it's right, you saw what he... But to be fair, he's in a very no BS mood. Stood up to his, once again, I believe, stepson and his wife last episode. So he's just he's feeling himself. Oh, I'm Big Balls McGee. So I kind of expect that, it's no longer a front. Oh, I've got control of my own. Oh, I'm big dog now, all the way through. That character of Vance is a dick. Don't get me twisted. I love Breckenmeyer. I've been a fan for ever. Road Trip might have been I've not watched that movie in ages. I grew up loving that movie. Also, obviously all the Robot Chicken related stuff he's on. Franklin and Bash. Still need to circle back to that show because I think I never saw the final season, or maybe the final season and the second to last season. Regardless, that's a whole tangent in itself. But yeah, so it's just ultimately, it's okay, did they actually do something? And it's oh, have you seen Vance? Where is he? He's no idea. And I'm did they? I was they didn't actually. And it's no, they didn't. And now because of everything, we're expanding to women's hair care now. It's yeah. And I'm going to put it up to Stan and Dean. And he's they're yep, sure, we'll do it for you, buddy. So their attempts to bring down this cult fizzled out, because I'm about to say it's you're at least in the know about some people, but I guess because at that time it hadn't been revealed oh, we're gonna bounce, because at that moment I'm truth be told is you could just I'm sure Dean wouldn't want for one, it's killing someone that's not really their thing. But the girls literally hired a hitman to kill someone, so it's not out their realm, but Stan nor Dean know about that. But it's also you do have connections that kind of make Vance disappear, but I guess it's it's I guess in some shape or form it's right, we're not the full-blown criminals, our significant others are. Those trio, they're kind of their own lane of their own when it comes to being criminals. So there's that. And so, obviously, the conversation about, let's disappear. Stan, you need to get away from this guy. Stop being his bitch. Got the money. Let's bounce. then you have Annie deciding like, oh, she's going to buy an RV, and she tracks down Kevin. And it's like, right, we can go anywhere. We need to kind of go. And it's like, there's 2 bedrooms. It's like, where's Benji going? He's going to have his own room. And it's like, you know, she's choosing Kevin, you know, and I actually thought it was a really sweet scene and everything. So everything seems like, all right, we're wrapping things up. Like, obviously Nick got like exposed. Like, they sent out like all the stuff that Rio gave Beth to everyone. Bam, 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 bam. And now like Nick's kind of in trouble. And I love Beth being like, I will do whatever's in my power to, you know, root out any corruption and stuff like that. So, and as she's doing the thing, Mick rolls up. I'm like, what's Mick doing there? I'm like, nah, it can't. No, I can't. And she's like, what? She's like, no, what's this about? And he was like, consequences. And even though I was like, what consequences? I was like, why would Rio do that? I was like, that doesn't make any sense. We'll get an answer. We get an answer to that later, and I'll talk about that. But I was like, he locked Dean in a garage and ends up, you know, Beth's like, what do you want? Do you want a hot tub? Do you want money? Like, I can give you pop. I was like, yeah. I was like, did that happen? Did that really happen? I was like, are we going to find out she's going to wake up in the hospital and be okay? Like, usually don't leave her. I mean, for one, I guess at the time I should have thought about it too. I was like, it was 1 gunshot, but sometimes 1 gunshot's all you need. But they didn't do that with Lucy. She got the pop. I don't even remember actually how many bullets, but it was definitely more than 1. Like, Lucy got popped. Like, it's just to make sure. So it's like, for him to only do a 1 tap is like, okay. You know, so I'm like, okay, so what's that about? And then, like, Beth wakes up and she's got a wound. I'm like, oh. I was like, oh, so we're really just skipping over all that? Because at first my mind's like, all right, because of the whole series finale thing, I'm like, did they re-record some stuff or something? Like, were they able to? Because some shows, it feels like they're able to do that. They're able to squeeze in some last-minute, like, filming to kind of compensate or shift the things. I don't know if that's always the case. And once again, I'm not well-versed in the behind-the-scenes productions of, like, what they're able to do in a certain amount of time. Regardless, I was like, all right, they're in Nevada, they're living that life. Everyone is kind of living that life, obviously, and he's kind of enjoying it. At first, it seemed like, oh, everything's okay, everyone's enjoying everything. Beth and Stan are working at, not Beth and Stan, but Stan and Ruby are working at a nail salon place. Beth is back to just being a regular mom. It's like, oh, like, I'm up to something. And then Dean's like, what? And she's like, yoga. And it's like, oh, Annie and Benjamin, well, Ben and Kevin, you know, it's like Kevin wants to leave, but it's like, no, this is the only free parking spot in Nevada, along with the only free school like Ben could be able to go to and also play lacrosse. So obviously it's not all that they were kind of hoping it would be. It's not like this outlandish experience all across the board. I did appreciate Ruby and Stan, like, doing their thing, and just Sarah looking at them like they're like, yeah, you got, but what if you guys don't have any customers? Oh, we'll have customers, but what if you don't? But even Ruby's like, what if we don't? It's like, well, we can always take money out of little man's, you know, boarding school and stuff like that. So, okay. And he's like, we could always put him to work if we need more. And she's like, but he's 9. Yeah, but he's short. And she's like, ooh, he could do the feet. And it's like, you know, working their way around it. But, this kind of like, oh, I mean, because especially when you look at it, I feel like, maybe it's my imagination, like, it feels like that part of the episode has a little bit of a brighter contrast. Like, once again, I might be, like, tripping. It's like, no, it's exactly the same. Maybe it's just, like, at least the Beth stuff seemed like it had a super brighter contrast, and everything. It was like, the happy neighbors and everything. We got away and everything like that. That's what I thought. Like I said, I thought maybe, that was something that was filmed later, so they had to, like, completely change what they wanted for this episode or something. And it seems like everything's okay, but then it's still, like, the reality of things start creeping in, because Beth's at a store that's getting robbed, and she's explaining to the dude, because, like, right, I've been in this situation. At this point in time, the cash register is empty. The fact of the matter is, that person's already pushed the panic button, so the cops are going to come along. So you went in to steal my purse. I'm not going to let you do that, but I can stall you enough for the cops. And he's like, do you want to die? And she's like, kind of. And he's like, yeah, because the boring suburban life isn't what she wanted. I mean, things aren't 100% great for Annie, because it's like, right, the suburbia life doesn't match with Kevin either, because he's going to, like, moon the guy across from them, well, not even moon him, just straight up streak in front of him. It's like, oh, he wants this view so bad, I'm gonna give him this view. And Ben's like, what are you doing? He's like, not much, B-man, just sun rating. He's like, oh my god, just soak it in the rays. So, but then Ben's not too happy about the current situation. I was like, oh, is it just, what's so different about this lacrosse team? It's because Ben has to deal with those circumstances. Because Ben had brought it up a little earlier in the season, like, that's why he was a little reluctant to go back to his old school, because he had to deal with that. At this new school, like, everyone accepted his circumstances, and just, like, it was not an issue like it was in his old school. So this is kind of that thing of, like, right, I had to shower in a different, like, put my uniform in the other, changing room. And it's like, so it's, and so Annie kind of feels bad because, like, right, you're kind of forced to suffer because of my circumstances. I kind of put you in a, and then, like, Sarah is not in a favorable condition either, because it turns out, like, the kidneys being rejected. I was like, dude, this is a lot. I was like, are we going to have a dark ending? Because I was like, wow, this is, because it's going to be like, right, everything you did, like, it's almost like karma came back to bite you in the ass. It's like, you're bad people you actually thought you were going to get away with and everything was going to be okay. It's like, no, life isn't going to, be on, it's almost like a gangster getting out of it. It's like, right, things aren't going to be the way you think they are. So it kind of fits in that same regard of, like, right, the end of the road ain't what you thought it would be. You thought there'd be a little bit more, but it's like, they need money. And Beth is all too quick to be like, well, I have been knitting. And Annie and Ruby look at her and look at each other. They proceed to rob the place. They know the go-to. And then Beth gets shot. I was like, whoa. I was like, wait, is this all a dream sequence then? Since she got shot? Because I was like, right, this is actually going to be her, like, her subconscious has been manifesting this. Technically, she hasn't been unconscious. Well, it had to be some form of like, she was unconscious to some extent. I mean, especially because, like, the fact that she saw the hitman, he's like, oh, what did I tell you? Well, that was the whole reason why he was like, oh, you need to run away with me, because going back, you ain't going to be able to live your normal life. Because even Dean was like, oh, I'm glad to have you back. That's the thing. Beth has made it clear. Granted, her progression of the story has made it clear, but she made it clear, even clearer this season. She has no intention of ever going back to being boring Beth Bolin. Like, now she got a taste of that criminal life, and she's good at it. It's like what she does. So... And he's like, right, how'd you think this was always going to end? Like, no matter where you go, it was always going to follow you. It's a part of who you are. And then, like, we phase back into reality, and now we see, like, the two people who worked at the store she was robbing are paramedic. Well, one's a paramedic in front of her, the other's a cop. And it's like, oh, once again, your subconscious mind it's almost like a dream where it's like, hey, here are people you've met in your life, and you're just applying it to this dream sequence. But that's why I'm like, the way she was, like, kind of conscious made me go, like, was that 100% in her head in the sense of, like, was she kind of daydreaming, or was it kind of more like a straight up, like, dream? I mean, that's me kind of splitting hairs, but still, it was just kind of interesting. And it's like, right, do you see who shot you? And Dean's like, go ahead, tell him. And it's like, she's like, I don't remember. And then you're like, he's like, go up, Beth. And I was like, are you trying to blame it on Vance or something? But I'm like, that won't stick. But then Beth's like, no, I can't. And it's like, Dean's super fed up about it, and they ask her, like, are you going to be okay? But, she's like, I can't go to Nevada. They were like, no, like, we were finally out, like, you won't be a criminal, that's the whole point, like, you won't be a criminal anymore. And for her, it's like, exactly, she really enjoys what she does. And even her thinking, like, oh, maybe there's a higher reason for this. It's like, what would you make you think? Hey, like, he missed, like, would Mick really have missed, like, and made sure the job wasn't done? It's like, he did it on purpose. I mean, he even left the gun, and part of me was like, even Ruby's like, look, got this look, like, why did he leave the gun? I was thinking, like, oh, like, he wanted you to have an opportunity to pop somebody. Like, that's why I was like, was he trying to give you the opportunity to get revenge against Rio or something? And then we find out, no, Mick was working for Nick. That's why he was saying the consequence. I was like, oh! And Rio was like, no, that's done. He's like, don't worry, like, I ruined her life. And he's like, I took a page out of your book. He's like, I finished it. And Rio's like, what are you talking about? Because that's what I was about to say. Like, Beth's still super alive. Mick didn't kill her. I was like, what's up with that? And it's like, oh. Then we find out, it's like, yeah, he's like, oh, you know what gun was used? The one for Lucy. I was like, no. And then Andy's got that look like, dude, I love it. Oh my, that's such a good turnaround. It's like, of course. And it sucks because Mick likes Annie too. That's what really sucks about that. Like, he had, because that's what made it seem so out of, like, despite everything, it's like, yeah, he's got his orders are orders, I gotta do what I gotta do. But I think on some level, it's just, it is what it is. But I think he felt bad about, because to be fair, him and Annie had some personal time together. I mean, hell, like, even last episode, him and Ruby and her were, like, spray painting. It's like, oh, we're going to clean it up for the cameras. That whole bit. So it's like, he kind of felt bad because he does like those ladies, but it's like, hey, my orders are my orders. I'm a foot soldier. Hey, the boss gives the order. The boss gives the order. Technically, Nick was still the boss at the time, or at least, I guess Mick is like, I get paid, and Rio's like, no, I shut that down. Don't ever try to use my people to do your wet work anymore. But now it's like, Phoebe and Dave get it, and it's like, oh, is it a sibling rivalry thing? It's like, well, it's not our jurisdiction, it's not our case anymore. So they got what they want, and so they're kind of leaving them high and dry. I mean, there's not much they can do. All the evidence points towards ending. So she comes back to Ben and Kevin, and she's like, yeah, I don't think I'll be able to go with you guys. They're like, why not? She's like, I'm in a bit of trouble. I'm like, she has no choice but to explain, like, yeah, I'm going to jail. It's like, that's coming out of nowhere for everyone. And then Ruby wants to stay because she's like, right, I can't leave Beth behind after something like this. And then it's like, okay, we're going to go ahead, and then you get to decide. She's like, decide what? Like, make your decision, like, choosing. It's like, now Stan's giving her the ultimatum. Once again, understandably, because it's like, right, the longer we wait, the worse it's going to get. Because it continues to get, there's no, like, way, we literally have a way out, and you don't want to take it. I mean, Beth's probably going to justify it by being like, everything she saw in her vision, it didn't work out for everyone. But it's more so like, it's a selfish reason of like, no, I don't want to give up being a criminal. So Stan's making his decision, Dean's making his, but Beth is more understanding with Dean being like, no, I completely understand. He's like, we can't do this anymore. And so I guess he's taking the kids, and it's like, right. Probably just see them on weekends type of thing. I don't know. I don't know how that whole thing's going to shape out. But Ruby is packing a suitcase at the end. I don't know if that's just her packing Sarah's bag or whether that's her making the decision like, I'm going to go be with my family. Like, maybe she will go, but then eventually have regrets about it and eventually come back to help Beth. Because Annie ends up getting arrested. And you're like, dude. I was like, yeah. Like, the moment the episode started playing out the way it did, it's like, oh, this ain't no happy ending. Like, so nothing got refilmed. Like, this is the way the episode was originally supposed to, like, they weren't probably in an opportunity. Once again, like, I'm just bringing that up because it feels like some shows have an opportunity to add some stuff or ship some stuff, like, depending on when they got the news and whether, I mean, maybe I'm full of it because, like, right, once a show's canceled, they don't, like, put any more money to give you an opportunity to wrap things up. Unless, I mean, you get your weird cases like Timeless, for example, which they were able to wrap that up. Like, in 2 movies, after the show got canceled, like, twice. After the first season, and then, like, after the second season. It's a whole thing. I mean, it's also weird when you find out, like, shows get canceled multiple times. Like, The Killing got canceled multiple times. It got canceled after its 2nd season, I believe, and then it got canceled again after its 3rd season, and it ended up with a final season on Netflix. I'm going, like I said, tangent and all that. But, Beth is a councilwoman and everything, and it's like, right. She's like, you know what makes things kind of interesting this time is like, she's like, you work for me now. And he's like, well, sure thing, boss. And so I guess that's potentially going to be more of a thing. I mean, Rio's always had a soft spot for Beth anyway, but now, like, it's like, right, she's being her true self. It's like, yeah, this is her. Once again, she was always a little more Wendy Bird / Walter White and not Marty Bird. Like, that's always like, she's definitely in her Wendy bag, kind of her Walt bag right now, so. The troublesome W's, I guess you could call them. So, kind of a depressing ending, especially if this potentially being the series finale and everything. But I think overall, like, I still think it's enjoyable as like a season finale. We'll talk about the series finale stuff right now. Okay, so I usually don't look into this stuff until, like, I want to get my thoughts out without, getting all that information kind of clouding my thoughts on things. So, this is technically the official series finale because it was that thing of, please Netflix come through, which sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's just negotiations, for whatever reasons, broke down, at least based on what I'm reading. This is like from, like, I really quickly Googled it. It's from, like, an EW, Entertainment Weekly article from, like, June 25th or something like that. So, because obviously this news has been there for a while, so that was, like, immediately, like, because they knew, like, before. I mean, it makes sense. The show went from being on Sundays to a Thursday, so like you knew something was a little weird. I mean, they did. It's a whole thing. So this is a series finale in the sense that like there were negotiations to make the show come back for a 5th and final season, which the way they've set this up, I'm like, all this show needs is one more season. It just needs one more season to completely wrap everything up, but it doesn't seem like, from what it was saying, like, it doesn't seem like there's any way around that. I hope that's not the case. I hope there's something can happen, but I think because of rights and, like, there's like a small window of something getting picked up by, like, a Netflix or something. It's like, I don't, because I think this does well on Netflix, like, you know, as a show, like, you know, people binging it. Like, I think it does well, but once again, just the way the story is set up, you definitely can feel this being like, oh, like just one more season. I hope it wouldn't be a thing of one more season and it's shorter. I guess you could still do that. You'd have to like cut probably through a lot of like what they want, but you can definitely feel like it just needs one more season to wrap everything up. Beth's in power, Annie's in jail. Ruby, once again, whether she's still staying by Beth's side after all this, or whether, I think that was her packing up Sarah's stuff and not her own, but I think it came out her drawer, so I don't know if that was her packing Stan's stuff. I think he already packed his, so that might have been, like I said, I'm an idiot, so that probably was her packing. Like, the family and dynamic situations all across the board are shifting, and I would have loved to see what that would have looked like in the 5th season. Like, what about Nick? Like, yeah, he kind of broke everything, but she's in a powerful position. Granted, it's like, right, you're a councilwoman, and it's going to look bad upon you, where it's like, oh, well, because it's going to look bad in the sense of like, oh, your sister tried to kill you, and what that means for like Ben and everything, so that's going to get a little awkward, especially because the kids are probably going to hear news about like, wait, Aunt Annie tried to kill you? That's going to be a whole conversation, but I'm sure with her power and position, she's going to try and make things right, trying to get Annie like bail or something like that. I don't know. Like, she's in a powerful enough position to kind of make that work, but I'm curious, like, is Nick going to be left alone? Is Rio going to make, like, it felt like it was more so going to be a thing of like Rio was going to kill his cousin, but it's like, or like, I think I always forget what I was saying. I think I was saying the vice versa, whether the cousin was going to kill Rio or not. But I felt like it was going to come down to that. Potentially could in the future, but yeah, like I said, sadly the show, it's kind of missed that window of like getting picked up. Like I said, I hope that's something that can be changed, like that isn't set in stone, but it seems like it is set in stone that this is the series finale we have. So, like I said, I'm crossing my fingers, still hoping for some miracle, but it doesn't seem like it, which is a bummer. I know some people have had their issues with the show. I've enjoyed the ride. I've loved every bit of it. I know not everyone's felt the same. They're just like, oh, like it was good early on and it fell off. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I'm not going to fight someone for feeling like that, but it's just like, I've still enjoyed the ride all the way through, and I'm just like, I would have been so excited, like, because I kept thinking about that myself with the ending. I'm like, it just needs one more season. It just needs one more season to wrap everything up, like, to give us a really good conclusion. So, but that's currently where things stand. But once again, a really neat season finale, because that set up some really interesting things for a 5th and final season. I wonder, did they write it in a way to be set up for a 5th and final season, or was it just going to be like, we're going to get a season 5 and then we were going to decide whether or not, well, depending on what NBC told us, would determine whether or not it'd be the final season or not. I don't know how much story they had planned out. You know, it's like Manifest. There was like a 6-season plan for that. Like, who knows what the full plan was for this? Or I don't know. I just think it's interesting that the goal, I mean, to be fair, the goalpost is always getting moved across the show of like, right, they had Nevada planned and like that kind of fell through in many different regards, kind of didn't in others. It's a whole thing. So like I said, I just hope, you know, we have an it's just hopeful that something is able to happen, but that's kind of where everything is, you know, so. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good